Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to celebrate the official launch of The Way of the Gardener by Lyndon Penner. My name is Lohit Jagvani, and I'm part of the marketing team for the University of Regina Press. I'll be your event technician for this afternoon. We'll start the event shortly, but before we do, I wanted to address a bit of housekeeping. Audience microphones will be turned off for the duration of the event. This event is live and is being simulcast to YouTube. If you would prefer not to have your face in a public video, please refrain from turning on your camera during the event. University of Regina Press is located on Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Nehiyawak, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota nations, and the homeland of the Métis people. The event will begin with a conversation between Lyndon Penner and moderator Jenn Blair, before concluding with an audience Q&A. Throughout the evening, please submit any questions you have in the chat feature below. While we may not have time to get to every question, we hope to answer as many as possible before the afternoon concludes. A reminder also that you can get a copy of The Way of the Gardener at ufrpress.ca. That's ufrpress.ca. For those in attendance today, we have a special discount code for you. Use Camino15 in all caps to receive 15% off The Way of the Gardener. We will also paste this code and the link in the chat just after these messages. Finally, please be mindful that we strive to facilitate the safest possible space for our authors, panelists, and guests. Please show kindness and respect to everyone in attendance. I'm now pleased to introduce you to Jenn Blair, who first met Lyndon when she began producing his weekly gardening column on CBC Calgary's afternoon radio show about 10 years ago. She started gardening around the same time, and a friendship was born. Today, she is a producer with the Go Public Investigative Unit with CBC National News. Jen, over to you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this event. I'm very excited to talk about this book. This is Lyndon's 4th book after 3 books about gardening. And this chronicle is his 6 weeks walking the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage route in Spain. If you haven't picked up your copy yet, you're in for a treat. Please do put any questions you have down in the chat. If you have questions for Lyndon, we will certainly compile those and put them to Lyndon to answer a little later on. So, but first of all, I'm going to ask him some questions just to get the ball rolling. And I'm very excited to talk about this book because it was a very enjoyable read. And in these times when we can't go anywhere, to read a travel memoir is a special treat, I think. So Lyndon, why don't we start here? First of all, we've got to say this is a real departure from your previous books. Instead of telling us how to grow stuff, you are telling us this very personal story about your pilgrimage that took 6 weeks and was a very intense time in your life. So what was it like for you to share this much of yourself in a book?
It was weird. It was unusual. It was, I was fortunate that U of R Press, I have to start by saying, is so wonderful to write for. And they said, we're going to hook you up with a really good editor. His name is Alex, and we want you to get along and we want you to be comfortable with each other. And so we did. And Alex challenged me so much with my writing because I write about things as they happen. And so Alex would say, okay, that's great, but tell me what you were feeling. Like, you're describing what you were seeing, but tell me what you were feeling in that space. Or he would say, I don't really believe you. I want you to make me believe this passage and tell me about, what this smelled like, what you touched, what you heard, what you like. And then he would make me go back and rewrite it. And he would say, okay, I like what you did here. Write it like you were explaining it to your grandparents. And I would. And he would say, okay, now write this like you were explaining it to grade 6 students. And I would write the same passage again. And then he would say, okay, here's what I want to pull out of both of these. And this is kind of how I want this to look. And I kind of want to do it in a way that everybody who reads this should feel like they're on a journey with you. It was a very strange, wonderful experience because I didn't know that would be, I was like, this is not going to interest anybody. I remember saying that to Alex, that nobody cares. And Alex said to me, you have to write from your authentic self or your reader won't connect with you. So I need you to be as real as possible with me. And I said, okay. And I trusted him. So it was a weird experience, but it was fabulous.
Yeah. Let's go on to the beginning. So Carol, who I hope is on this call.
She is. I just saw her a moment ago. She's
okay.
Here. Hi, Carol. Hi, Dan.
Screen, but hello, Carol. So Carol invited you to come along on this journey. What first enticed you to do this?
I was embarrassed that I had never heard of the Camino. Carol telling me about it was, like, it was this very famous pilgrimage. And the fact that I had never heard of it, I was genuinely embarrassed by it because I like to think that I know about stuff in the world, and I clearly didn't. And I have such respect and love for Carol when she was like, I said, we were looking at her Camino scrapbook and I said, this looks really fun. And she said, it is fun. And I just thought, well, Carol can't be wrong about this. Like, if Carol says it's fun, it's gonna be fun. We should do this. So we did.
All right. So, I mean, it wasn't without its challenges. We'll get into that a little bit. You describe yourself as more of a plant person than a people person.
That's true.
So let's get into how did that challenge you on the Camino? But then how did being a plant person also help you in your journey?
It challenges you in the sense that if plants are sort of filter that you put the rest of the world through, you have to acknowledge that you're probably, there's probably not a lot of people who do that. And so people always want to talk about the television shows that they're watching, the food that they're eating, the relationship that they're in, the like normal human things. And I want to talk about the shape and size and color of the twigs and bark on that tree over there. And that doesn't always grab people, like people who garden maybe, but most people are not gardeners, I would say. So it was a bit of a challenge to try and tap into less of my horticultural gardening self and more into my, you're a human being having a human experience self. So that can be difficult, but I think I got it in the end. I think I got there.
But being a plant person, I mean, you almost use the plants as a form of navigation or locating yourself in all these new places where you would find yourself every day. How did the plants kind of draw you through the journey?
Well, I do that wherever I journey. It doesn't have to be Spain. So when I travel somewhere, that's what I look at. And some people, when they travel, like to look at look at architecture or look at landmarks or buildings. I look at plants. And so plants make me comfortable. Plants make me feel at home. Plants help me make sense of the world. And so very often, like when people travel to places where they don't speak the language and they've never been before, I have often heard travel writers and speakers say how overwhelmed they felt. Like I remember reading a memoir of a young woman who went to Vietnam, and she was, I think, from Seattle. And she got there and she didn't speak the language and she didn't understand any of the food and she didn't understand the culture. And she just felt completely swamped. And I would probably have felt the same way. But the way that I immediately start making myself comfortable and making my way through it is, oh, I know that plant. That plant over there, I know what that is. Oh, these are like this that grows at home. Oh, I know what kind of an ecological zone I'm in. It is a way of putting myself at ease and making myself comfortable. And I can do that wherever I am. So I think maybe in a sense, it's a calming thing for me that I'm like, people don't always want to be your friend. Plants always want to be your friend. Plants are always wanting to connect with us, I think. So it's easy. I never met a tree that said, get away from me. Or, like a tree that said, sorry, I can't communicate with you. Plants are always there to be friendly and welcoming. And I think I just grab onto that.
Great. Well, but not all of it was comfortable, as we know. I'd like to talk about some of the less comfortable moments of this journey. Okay. Can we start with coffee? That was super frustrating for you. What was the deal?
It was. I'm not going to paint myself in a super flattering light with this. I love coffee. If I could run across a beach into coffee's arms, I would. And so, because this is Alex's fault, I had written a line or two about how things would have just been so much better if I would have just been able to get a large coffee in the morning. That would have just solved a lot of problems. And Alex said, tell me about that. And so I talked about my love affair with coffee, and he said, did it really frustrate you that you couldn't get a large coffee in Spain? And I said, yeah, it really did. And he said, okay, you're going to write about that. And I said, okay, I'm going to trust you on this. And I did. And so so that was how that came into the book, was that like when you were walking the Camino, when you were walking anywhere, like you're going to walk 20 kilometers today. You put your boots on, you put your hiking shoes on, you're ready to go. What do we all do before we leave the house? We either grab a coffee or we go through the drive-thru and we grab a coffee. And that is how people from the Western world and other parts of the world too fuel ourselves. And fuel in Spain and many other parts of Europe is served in shot glasses. And I'm like, I just want a large coffee to go. And when you're doing something that is physically difficult or physically challenging, and and you're going to be really tired at the end of the day, and you do this over and over again, small frustrations that would normally be small, they can over time become big frustrations when you are doing something as monumental as walking 800 kilometers. So I think I was disproportionately annoyed about the lack of large coffee. but it was, and now it's funny. Now it amuses me how irritated I was about my inability to acquire a large coffee. But at the time, I was just like, surely to God, like, like there must be some way to acquire a vast amount of coffee, and there wasn't. And you have to roll with that. And I tried not to be whiny about it because, when you're walking with someone else, you don't want to be a burden to them. So I hope that I didn't complain endlessly on the Camino. You might have to ask Carol about that, or Isabel. But it was just, I just wanted a coffee. It was all I wanted in life.
Isabel is weighed in here in the chat saying, Isabel, also, hello, Isabel.
Hi, Isabel.
Another fellow traveler on the pilgrimage route. She said she remembers you getting very excited finding pre-made Starbucks coffee in the supermarket.
It only happened once. Okay. It was an isolated event, and I may have done a cartwheel.
Okay.
It's possible.
I'm guessing that was unlikely, but okay.
Well, what it did was it almost created the expectation of finding it again. So I was like, no, don't get excited. This may have been your pilgrimage miracle that people write about. And so I was like, perhaps the saints along the way have now provided me with sustenance. And so I appreciated it when we found it, but I didn't make it an expectation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very good. Let's come back to the plants for a moment. You talk about them as almost as travel companions, or
Yes.
ways for you to anchor yourself in an unfamiliar place. From this journey, of the many plants you encountered and wrote about in the book, which ones do you think that will remember most vividly from this pilgrimage, and why? Like, why are those plants the ones that are going to stand out for you?
The olive trees. It is absolutely the olives. The olives, because it might be in part because I don't have them at home. This was the only other time in my life I had ever really seen olive groves was in California, and I didn't really experience them. I saw them from a speeding car and stood on a hillside and looked down over them. So I didn't really get truly acquainted with them. And there's no shortage of olives on the Camino. I've also read a number of books about olives. There's one that's about the history of the olive that I can't remember the title, that I read years ago that really moved me. And there was also one that I think is called The Angel Tree. And it was about this garden designer who had an unbelievably wealthy client. And he said, basically, find me the oldest olive tree in the world, and I will pay whatever it costs to have it moved from whatever nations it's in to my garden. And ultimately, this was unsuccessful, but it's the story of this. And it haunted me. And so olives have been part of my subconscious, I think, for a long time. Also, perhaps, growing up in the church with like the olive, extending an olive branch, and the dove bringing Noah an olive branch. They were always associated with peace, which is something that I value. I like peaceful places. I don't like loud music. I don't like loud cities. I don't like leaf blowers. I like peacefulness. So I always wanted to make friends with olives, and they were extravagantly beautiful in Spain. And then I realized, as I was looking at them, that they are actually native to Spain. This is a native species of tree that was adapted into cultivation, but yes, they're planted, yes, they're cultivated, but they belong here. This is the landscape in which nature selected for olives to become a dominant tree. And the way that they will arrange their leaves based on the light and the age of the trees, and the way that they, were so permanent and so old. And I thought about, these are trees that stood here for decades and maybe centuries before I was even born. And 100 years from now, somebody will be walking this path and marveling under the very olive trees that I am standing under. And it makes you feel insignificant, but in a wonderful kind of way. It was just, I have dreamt about the olive trees of Spain. I have had, it's the only thing from the Camino that I would say really haunts me. Certainly you remember, certainly you have memories, but it is the olive trees that, when I think about the Camino, I think about this great company, almost like the Ents in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, that they were just this this vast array of studious, dutiful, almost soldier-like, peaceful. They were like centurions guarding me as I walked. They haunt me.
Amazing. Well, you find gardeners everywhere you go in the world, and you've traveled around the world yourself. What would you say characterizes the Spanish gardener? What did you see of the way that people love to garden in that part of the world?
You know, that is such a good question. I saw, because a lot of what you see in Spanish gardens are vegetables, and a lot of very simple, commonplace flowers like petunias, geraniums, impatiens, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that you wouldn't see in any other nation in the world. But all of those gardens were drenched in love. Those flowers were cherished. Every window box, every little vegetable garden, it was just, you could so tell that people poured love into those gardens, and those flowers were appreciated and celebrated. Very often in North America, you know, people barely notice pots of flowers when you walk into a restaurant, a pub, a hotel. And in Spain, it was like you were meant to notice the flowers. They were meant to bring you joy. It was meant to be celebratory. All those little gardens, and maybe this is just my own perception, all of those little gardens to me felt loved. And here, and you probably have noticed this yourself, Canadians have a tendency to plant for the sake of planting. Like, we all feel this need when the snow melts to do our yard. You know, we all got to go to the garden center. We all need some color. We all have this urge to plant things. I can go into a new neighborhood and tell you exactly what was on sale at Home Depot, you know, because that's what people buy for shrubs. That's what people buy for plants. And I don't remember seeing any garden centers or greenhouses in Spain where plants were for sale. So maybe acquiring these plants is more difficult there. I don't know. I never saw a place where I was like, oh, that's where people go to buy plants. Because I would have dragged Carol and Isabel and Mark into those places. But it was just all of the gardens there felt like somebody cherished them. And that I remember too.
A lot of people, when they go on a trip like this, particularly North Americans going to Europe, architecture is a huge draw. We want to see those ancient cathedrals. We want to see the Gothic stonework. You know, it's a big part of the experience for a lot of people. For you, it wasn't as much, but you did have two very different, opposite, I would say, experiences with architecture while you were in Spain. I would like to hear from you about your experience being in the cathedral in Burgos, and then at the end of the journey, you're in the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. Those were two very different experiences of architecture,
yes.
And not one you hear about very often. I'd like to hear you talk about that part of your experience.
So for anybody who hasn't read the book, the Burgos Cathedral is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think it's one of the oldest cathedrals of its kind in Europe. And it is this masterwork of masonry and stone and gold. And, you know, like it is just, it's not like anything we have in North America. And Carol had seen it before and was very excited about seeing it again. And I got really excited about seeing it because I thought, well, this sounds cool. I don't visit a lot of cathedrals in Alberta. And so, you know, I thought this sounds great. And I walked around in this cathedral, and it's quite dark in the cathedral. There's actually very little light. And I went through it, and it takes you a little while to walk around it. And I didn't feel well in that cathedral, and I couldn't. It was an implacable thing. It wasn't like I have cramps. It wasn't like I have a headache. It was just something felt off. Something felt like it wasn't right. And I dismissed this. And they say you're supposed to listen to your instincts. And I went around again, and I was looking at the stone, and I was looking at the windows, and I was looking at the altar, and it started to feel heavy. I started to feel like I was breathing through like a wet blanket. And I was like, what is the matter with you? Like, you know, get yourself together here. And, you know, think about where you are. Think about how lucky you are. Think about all the people who would love to be here right now. Like, you're on the Camino, for goodness sake. Like, you should be enjoying this. This is part of the adventure. And I wasn't enjoying it. And a number of years ago, I went to an event in Calgary where Astrid Haddad, who was a Mexican performance artist, she had done a show, and she tells the story of Mexico's history through song and acting, and she wears these elaborate over-the-top costumes, and it's all very theatrical, and she doesn't speak any English, and so she spoke through a translator, and she talked about how she had traveled to Spain herself, and how, as a Mexican, it broke her heart, because she said, Spain is filled with churches and cathedrals, and all of their altars and holy places are covered in gold, and all of that gold was purchased with Mexican blood. And I had never thought about it in those terms, and I had never experienced that or seen anything like that. And I never forgot that comment that she said, and it never occurred to me in a million years that I would be standing in a cathedral in Spain. And suddenly her words came back to me, and it just, I couldn't breathe in that cathedral. I had to get out. The statues I remember looking up at statues and depictions of saints and thinking that they looked monstrous, and that, like, perhaps even demonic. And I was like, I have to get out of this church. I feel oppressed. I feel heaviness. And I went outside, and I found a tree, and I introduced myself and said, hello to the tree. And that was it. And that was my experience in Burgos. And Alex made me write about it, because I mentioned it in passing. So if the book is any good, it's largely because of Alex. And then Santiago, when we finally got there, the cathedral was perhaps not as grand looking as it might look in photos on the internet, because they were renovating it. So there was like plastic sheeting and scaffolding, and there was like all kinds of things in the front of it. So it wasn't perhaps as grand looking as it might have been. But you get there, and Galicia is the most Celtic part of Spain. So I remember distinctly, as we walked up to the cathedral, there was bagpipes playing. There was several people in the street playing bagpipes, which you don't generally associate with Spain, but it was kind of like, we made it. We did it. We're here. It's over. You did it. We did it. It was very exciting. And we went into the cathedral, and I didn't feel any darkness. I didn't have a great spiritual, I didn't hear angels singing. There was no lights shining down on me. I didn't hear a hallelujah chorus. But it was like, this is something that hundreds of thousands of people have done before me and will do after me. And now I am part of this. I am part of this pilgrimage now. And that was not something I expected to feel, was that, if whoever I meet in my life, anybody who says, oh, I've done the Camino, I immediately have that connection with them, because, or if I read accounts of people who did it before me, or years from now, I'll read another account of somebody who's done it, and I will feel that connection. And actually, a funny thing happened recently. I got an email from a stranger who read the book, and when I write about the place where we stayed in Zubiri, she had done the Camino, and she said, I stayed in that same hostel that you did, that same albergue. And she said, I could picture the bathrooms that you mentioned. I could picture the beds. She's like, I was in that same room with you. And I thought, that's really cool. That's really a neat thing. So that was those two experiences.
Great. Michelle wants you to read from the book, and so do I.
Okay.
I've selected a passage that I think we should all hear together. So Lyndon, please grab your copy. I have my copy. Okay, I want you to turn to page 123. This is a surprise. He didn't know which.
Yeah, I don't know what this is. Oh, okay.
Okay, so I want you to start with, there were so many villages.
Okay, and then you'll tell me when you want me to stop? And
then it'll be the next page, stop before we get to the next date.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right, so There were so many villages full of farm animals that the smell of sheep, cattle, and pigs was unmistakable. In every single town, every single morning, I would hear one or more roosters crowing. I love that sound as it takes me back to my childhood. Early on in the journey, I decided to give the rooster a name, Miguel, a good Spanish name, and I pretended that it was the same rooster crowing in every town and that he was doing the Camino with me. Every morning when I heard him crowing, I imagined Miguel had left his albergue and that together we were heading down the path. One morning, as we heard the crowing even before dawn, I said to Isabel, Miguel is rather ambitious getting up before daylight today, isn't he? And Isabel said, Miguel? I explained to her that the rooster was my Camino friend. Isabel said, you can't just give him a name without giving him a backstory as well. So I did that too. So I decided that his name was Miguel Sanchez and that he was hatched in Majorca. His father had gone into the stewing pot when Miguel was still just a chick, and his devout mother grieved for her mate the rest of her days. She had always wanted to do the Camino, and especially to see the sacred chickens in Santo Domingo, but with all her egg laying and brooding, she just had never had the time or the opportunity. So before settling down to a life of his own, Miguel decided to do the Camino in honor of his mother. When I told Isabel this, she gave me a funny look and said that I spent way too much time inside my own head.
Oh, okay. Isabel, come on. You wanted the backstory. He gave you a great one. And then you tell him he spends too much time in his own head? Come on.
I think she wanted a line and I gave her like an entire soap opera. And I think it was just, you know, well, you ask for a muffin and somebody gives you a cake. That's maybe not what you want.
He was my favorite character in the book, actually.
Oh, great. I'm pleased about that.
Well, speaking of characters, though, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the people that you met along the way. I mean, the Camino is not exactly a vacation, and it's not something that a lot of people would sort of sign up for. There's a lot of discomfort. It's not a glamour thing. So is there something that you would say that sort of unifies this group of people who chose to do this experience?
I feel like a lot of the people who do the Camino are searching for something. They want closure, they want peacefulness, and you know, there's a lot of people who who do the Camino because they're not sure what they want to do next in their life. You know, like there was a lot of people who nobody had done it frivolously. Like nobody was just like, so I decided I would just do the Camino one day, which is kind of what I did. But it felt like everybody was searching for something. And I noticed a couple of times that people would talk about the great freedom of being out on the Camino, or, you know, they were getting fresh air, they were getting exercise, they were having a cultural experience, they were having all of this adventure that they never had. And I remember thinking a couple of times, my life is full of fresh air and exercise and adventure. I'm not really lacking anything. And a lot of people, it seems to me, are looking for what I already have. And it made me feel very grateful and very humbled, and sometimes even a little bit guilty because, you know, I remember talking to some of the Americans and some of the British people and even a few Australians along the journey who said, you know, I work a 9-to-5 job. I have this very structured, very busy life. And I just needed to do something that was unstructured or, didn't have a 9-to-5 sort of format. And I was like, I do an unstructured 9-to-5 format every day. And I'm grateful for it. But I didn't realize that the choices that I've made for myself, in a lot of cases, I have created the life that a lot of people are looking for. And so on one hand, that made me very proud of myself. And on the other hand, it made me very aware and say to myself, this is a great gift to you from the universe. If you have a life that is full of adventure and interesting people and you do what you love and what you're good at, that is an enormous, enormous gift that should not be treated casually, that you should not be cavalier about. And so a lot of things that I was very casual about, that I was like, oh yeah, I just get in my truck and go wherever I want, like big deal. Not everybody gets to do that. And not everybody gets to have a job where they are doing exactly what they were meant to be doing with their life. And I feel like I am. I can't imagine myself, like, can you picture me in a tie working at a bank? Like, of course not. Like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in the world. And I need to treat that with a greater degree of respect than what I previously did.
Hmm. You mentioned at some point in the book that a lot of the teachings of this experience for you kind of came to you long after you'd completed the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say a bit more about that? I mean, why does it take so long to sink in, or what is that? What's going on in the interim between being in the experience and then reflecting on it and kind of internalizing some of those lessons?
That is another great question, because being on the Camino, you are immersed in this experience. You don't have time to think about it. You are tired. You have just walked 25 kilometers and you're hungry and you're exhausted, and you aren't thinking really, at least I wasn't. I can only speak for myself. I was thinking about, how much further do we have to go today? Will it be awesome? Will it not be awesome? How are my shoes holding up? I really need to do laundry. You're thinking very, very practical thoughts about, maybe I need to go and maybe I need to pick up eye stuff in the next town. Maybe I need to pick up, maybe I'm out of toothpaste. Maybe I hope I can find a store where I can find toothpaste. I don't speak Spanish. So you're so busy doing it. You're so busy in the physicality of it. I think that you don't have a ton of time to really ponder it. So then you get home and you have your very large coffee and you're sitting outside and you have to, you can drive wherever you want again. I think that's when you have time to think about it, or you remember things, or if you're like me and you kept a journal, you go back and you read what you wrote and you're like, wow, I was really grumpy that day. And I don't remember thinking along the trail, I am really grumpy. But some of my writing, I'm like, you are a miserable old grouch and nobody wants to be friends with you. And then in other pages, I'm like, good job, Lyndon, that you wrote that down. Like, well done, you. So like, you sort of experience it again when you come back, but you have the freedom to experience it when you get back.
So interesting. We're getting close to the end of this more Q&A part. So if you have questions for Lyndon, I would really encourage all of you to please type them down in the chat. And I'm happy to put any questions that you have for him, to him, any comments, maybe a me too. If you've done a similar pilgrimage or you've done the Camino yourself, we would love to hear from you and have you participate in the discussion. One thing I want to ask you about, Lyndon, it seems like this book talks a lot about the idea of the Camino and what people expect to get out of it, and the realities of it on the other hand. And you said at the end of the book, maybe it's okay that it's not this profound revelatory thing. Maybe just to have done it is enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question to you is, was having done it enough? And how did you, I felt so relieved when you said you don't have to have this profound revelation. I thought, I feel like that takes some of the pressure off. But was that a pressure? Did you feel like there's a right way to do the Camino and there's expectations that people put on what the experience is supposed to be?
Well, I think in a lot of ways you get out of the Camino what you want out of the Camino. Like, I really think that people who are looking for closure or looking for adventure, I think you can find those things if you're looking for them. Like, how would I word this? Repeat your question, just because I'm thinking about this and I want to make sure I answer this correctly.
Well, what are your thoughts on that gap between what people expect from an experience like a pilgrimage and what the lived reality is?
Like, one of the things that appealed to the publisher about doing this book was that this is a very secular take on what has historically been a religious experience. And I don't write this as a religious experience because it wasn't. And I think if you go expecting something profound and miracles, I think you might be disappointed. Because the Camino is as miraculous as you want it to be, but like, there's not angels around every corner. There's not, saints don't suddenly descend from golden staircases to answer all of life's problems. So like, you can make the Camino, I think, is in a lot of ways what you make it. And it was for me, because I didn't have a set goal. I didn't have a thing that I was like, this is what I want the Camino to accomplish for me. I wanted to go on a really awesome adventure with my friend. And that's what I did. And so in it, I would have not said no to a profoundly spiritual experience if it had come upon me. Like, I wouldn't have been dismissive of angels if they had suddenly appeared, but they didn't, and I didn't expect them to. But I think if people go thinking that, you know, the Camino is this miraculous trail that will heal all of your hurts and give you direction and make you thinner and make you younger and make you like, it's not going to do those things. It's a fabulous adventure, but a lot of it is what you make of it, and a lot of it is what do you choose to make yourself aware of? Like, there's things that you can easily ignore in your own life that you'll just as easily ignore on the trail. You know, it's such a cliche to say wherever you go, there you are, but it's true.
Michael wants to know if you would do the Camino again. Oh, Andrew wants to know too. That's a common question.
My immediate response would be no, because I've done it. But I do think about what would it be like to do the Camino in springtime versus in late summer, fall. If one of my nephews, when they are adults, said, I want to do the Camino, Uncle Lyndon, will you come with me? I might do it. I don't have a desire to do it again. I'm really glad that I did it. I'm really grateful that I got to do it. But I've never had the thought, oh man, if I ever get to do the Camino again, or the next time I do the Camino. And some people do. I met an Australian on the Camino he was in his 40s and he was doing it for the first time. And he said that his mother had done it 10 times and that it had completely changed her life, and that she builds her entire year around walking the Camino. And so she goes every year to do the Camino. And he said, I had to go and do it myself and see what it is, because he said it profoundly changed my mother's life. And I have read other accounts like that as well. But I think maybe those people wanted to change their life anyway. You know, maybe the Camino is just the catalyst that some people need to create the things or change the things that they have the power to change all along.
Right. Nicole wants to know, has this experience changed the way that you envision future travel plans post-pandemic?
Oh, well, the pandemic does make me think I'm so glad we did the Camino when we did, because we sure wouldn't be going to do it now. I actually know a friend of a friend who went to do the Camino at the end of March last year. And it was right when the pandemic hit, and she had to come home, and she had just started, and she was so heartbroken. And I was so glad that that wasn't us, that the pandemic didn't come when we were doing it. I think future travel plans, I haven't thought about doing another pilgrimage. The next travel plans that I make, I actually was supposed to go to Ireland last year. That was to be my first big overseas trip post Camino, and then I didn't get to go because of the pandemic. So I don't know if I would do a walking travel thing again, but I might. You never know. Somebody said to me that they would really like to do a pilgrimage to Yakushima Island, which is a very rainy, windswept, rain-soaked, remote island that belongs to Japan. And she said, would you do that with me? And I was like, I would like to go to Japan. I don't know if I want to do a 4-week pilgrimagey hiking thing in Japan. But then I thought, but I already did one once, so I know I could do it. Do I want to do this again? I don't know. But it's not an ambition I have at the minute.
Estelle wants to know how many pairs of shoes you went through on the Camino.
None. I still have well, here, I'll tell you about my shoes. So I bought the very expensive shoes. I used them on the Camino, and when I got home, they were more or less worn out. And I took them back to the store and I said, these were very expensive shoes. And I have only had them for a year. Like, is this normal for them to be completely worn out already? And she said, no, do you do a lot of hiking? And I said, I did a lot of hiking in these shoes, like a lot. And she said, well, I'm going to take it up with the manufacturer, because she's like, these should not be worn out yet. So I got a credit for them, and I got a pair of shoes that I am still wearing. So, and that would have been in early 2018 that I got that sort of replacement pair of shoes. So I really only went through one pair of, I had my same pair of shoes lasted the whole Camino.
Michelle wants to know what it was like to be electronics free for 6 whole weeks.
It was really great for a short period of time. And then I was really sorry about it and wished that I had brought my phone with me. because you feel a little bit, at least I did, I felt a little bit cut off. Because when you're in a country where you don't speak the language and you don't really have any communication with people at home. I mean, like, if there was an emergency, like Carol or Isabel or Sandy or somebody would have said, here's my telephone, make a call. Like, I wasn't lost in the wilderness, but I didn't do any texting for 6 weeks. I didn't do any, I think I emailed twice along the journey because internet cafes are no longer the thing they once were. So finding a place where you could send an email wasn't always easy. If I was to do it again, I would not leave my phone at home.
I think, what did you miss the most? You mentioned music, like it would have been nice to have some tunes with you, or, you know, what would you do differently?
Oh, what would I do differently? I don't know. I made the best decisions I could with the information that I had. And I don't really think I regret anything about the Camino. I would have brought music. I would have had my phone and I would have had music with me. That is close to being, the only other actual regret I have about the Camino is the Spanish moon moth. So the Spanish moon moth is a rare species found only in like 2 very tiny parts of both France and Spain. And it's quite similar and quite closely related to the fabulous green Luna moth in North America. And so you actually tramp through Spanish moon moth territory on the Camino. And I mean, I'm not going to see this extremely rare moth that comes out at night. You know, I'm not going to see it in October when I'm on the Camino, but I would have liked to have known while we were walking through there that this is where the Spanish moon moth lives. And that would have been really cool. So I wish I had known about the Spanish moon moth before the Camino. That's probably my biggest regret, was that I had no knowledge of that moth till I got back. And who doesn't enjoy a good moth now and then?
Exactly. And they're pollinators too.
That too.
You did a lot of research before you went, and you asked a lot of people who had done the Camino before. You saw a lot of accounts of other people who'd already done it. So you sort of did your homework for sure. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe thinking about doing the Camino? What is the really good piece of advice that you would offer someone?
I would say go with someone that you adore. Go with somebody that will encourage you and support you and call you out on your nonsense when they need to. And so Carol and I got along really, really well on the Camino, and she encouraged me and she motivated me, and I hope I did the same for her. So that was really good. I feel like having somebody with you who's going to say, come on, it's just another 5 kilometers. We can do this. We got this. I think that's really, really important. Or, oh, I know it's a long way. Or isn't this beautiful? Like, I remember standing and looking at this vineyard one time, and Carol was standing next to me, and I said, this is so lovely. It's so nice that we get to do this together, because, you know, there's your normal friend things that you do with your friends where you go for coffee or you go for a walk or you watch a movie or whatever. You don't normally get to like gaze out at a vineyard on a 2,000-year-old pilgrimage together. And I thought, this is a nice thing to share with a friend, because it's not a thing that I will share with very many people in my life. So go with a really good friend would be my advice. Have really good shoes. That would be the two main things: good friend, good shoes, and I think you're set. And also maybe, and I mean, this is for any travel, not just the Camino, have an open mind. Be open to stuff, like just, every day on the Camino is the same, and every day on the Camino is totally different.
Kevin wants to know if you saw anybody running the Camino, and if so, what did you think of these folks who were sort of wanting to make a race out of it?
I did not see that I recall anybody running. I did see a few people on bikes. You can do the Camino on a bike, but I mean, you would have to have such powerful leg muscles. Like, if you can't crush a coconut between your thighs, you should not be riding a bike on the Camino, because some of that terrain, like, I was like, I don't know if these were Olympic athletes who were training or what the deal was. I didn't see anybody running, at least not that I recall. I do remember seeing a young woman, I don't know where she was from, wearing like Lululemon running gear, but I did not see her run. So that's, I don't think anybody runs it. I don't think, or maybe they went zipping past me so fast that I didn't notice.
Okay. Nicole wants to know, did you ever find yourself wondering what any of the other Camino routes were like, or what plants grew on them?
That's a good question. I didn't. I thought about, like, if you do the northern route, you're closer to the sea, so the plant life would change, of course. And the plant life in the very southernmost parts of Spain is much different than in the north as well. I didn't really feel like I was missing out, or that I was not that I recall thinking that. I can't say that I did.
There's quite a few, like the Camino de the Santiago is one, and then there's other ones in Europe.
Yeah, like I didn't think about, like if you do the Camino Portuguese, which goes from Lisbon to Santiago, that's quite a bit shorter. It would be more tropical. If you do the north route, it's going to be, and it's also more mountainous, so you might have seen different plants there. But I didn't find myself dwelling on that or thinking about that. But maybe now I will think about that. I hadn't really considered that until now, actually.
I want to talk a little bit about the discomfort. A pilgrimage is not supposed to be easy. Nobody
Right.
says it is. But there's this idea that suffering or discomfort could, be redemptive somehow. What do you think of that idea? Did your suffering feel redemptive?
No, I don't like pain. I don't like suffering. Lots of people have a really high threshold for pain. I get a paper cut and I'm like, can I go into work tomorrow? I don't know if I can. No, it's not that bad. But like, I don't feel like, I have a friend who works out a lot and who always says pain is just weakness leaving the body. And I think that is ridiculous. I don't think pain by itself is in any way virtuous. Pain is just pain. Pain is part of being alive. You become aware of your body sometimes more when it hurts. But I don't think pain is virtuous. I read a book many years ago called Pain, the Gift That Nobody Wants. And it was written by a Christian doctor who treats leprosy in India. And one of the symptoms of leprosy is that the body loses its ability to feel pain. So people actually go blind because they stop blinking. And they used to think that that was just the disease itself. And now they know that it's just if you held your eyes open so that you couldn't blink and your eyes started to dry up, they would hurt. And so, like, he writes about pain being this warning system for the body, that if you stick your hand in a fire, your brain says, get your hand out of there, because it doesn't want you to damage your hands. So pain is this warning system that we're supposed to have in our bodies that is supposed to alert us that something is wrong, and nobody sees it as a gift. So for me, pain is not virtuous, but it is something that we often don't think about. People who have an inability to feel pain are prone to accidents and injuries that the rest of us are not. So perhaps it is more virtuous than we think, but I don't feel like suffering makes your Camino better. But that's just what I think. I don't think you will have a better or a worse Camino, if you suffer. I don't feel like that's in some way a big thing for the pilgrimage. But
well, this is very apropos. Michelle's question. She wants to know if you would share the name of the shoes you hiked in, because she would really like a recommendation for a good hiking shoe.
I do not
Not
remember.
sponsored, everybody.
I have no idea the name brand. I don't have a clue. I bought those shoes at the Outer Limits store in Saskatoon in March of 2017. So I'm sure I could go back and ask them. I'm sure they have a sales transaction record of what it was, but I told the very nice young sales associate what I was doing. And I think I might have even written about this in the book. I'm not sure, but I think I might have put a paragraph or two in about this where I just went in and said, I'm going to hike the Camino. Please, 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 please do not let me get blisters. What shoes would you recommend? And this young sales associate was very generous with their time and very kind to me and sold me a pair of shoes that were comfortable and easy. And that's what I wore, but I couldn't tell you the brand name, honestly. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think this is getting to the end of our time together. Oh, wait, we have one more question. Marilyn has one more question. I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
She wants to know, do you have plans to go back to Spain?
Not immediate plans.
Okay.
Maybe once I've been vaccinated, I will go. If I was to go back to Spain, and it's not like number one on my destination list, because my attitude is always, well, if I've been there, I should choose a place to go that I haven't been. So now I've been to Spain, but if I was to go back, I would like to see the southern parts of Spain. I would love to go and see like the orange groves of Sevilla, or like the very southernmost Mediterranean parts of Spain I would like to see. I also think that Spain on vacation would be different than Spain on pilgrimage. And so like, I feel like those would be two very different experiences. So if I ever go back, I would like to go and sit in the very southernmost parts.
Okay, I'll go with you on that one.
Okay, perfect.
The vacation one.
You would be fun to vacation with, Jen.
And I speak Spanish. Oh, wait, we have a recommendation. I would recommend the Oboz hiking shoes. I don't know if I'm saying that right. OBOZ hiking shoes. Check out MEC online. They had some on sale. They have a larger toe box, so they're very comfortable.
Okay.
Anyone thinking about doing the Camino or some long hike. So I want to thank Lyndon for being here and sharing his thoughts about this amazing book. It's, yes, virtual applause.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in this afternoon. I know Isabel, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning in Australia and she wanted to be here. So my heart, like, I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you so much. I hope you will love the book. I hope that it will be something that you enjoy, and that it will be, if you can't travel, maybe you can travel with me. I hope that you'll love it.
There's a lot of calls here for you to do this as an audio book, Lyndon. So please think about that.
If the publisher asks me to do it, I will.
Okay, and if they want me to produce it, I will. So
I will let them know.
Thank you to everyone for being here. I want to remind everyone, if you haven't got your copy yet, it's a beautiful book and we make a lovely gift for any traveler and or gardener. Please go to University of Regina Press website and use the discount code. Get yourself a sweet discount of 15%. And the password for the discount is Camino15. Camino, all uppercase, 15, all one word. Go and get yourself a copy. It would make a great gift as well. Thank you so much to everyone. I think I'm going to turn things back over to Lohit at the press. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen, for doing this. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here at the event. You can purchase the book on this link. I'm just going to post it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.